broken, gone. Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of the Fishing Loons podcast, brought to you by Average Ontario Anglers. And if you're just joining us this time, you tuned in for a very special episode. Not only do you have myself, Andrew, and my co-host, Jesse, but we also have a great guest who we're going to introduce in just a little bit. We actually have a couple different guests on the show today, but we have one who's going to be sharing a lot of his vast knowledge as a guide, specifically on fishing walleye, as we like to call it, Ontario gold. But before we get too started into the main topic, we normally like to have a little bit of an interesting fishing fact, a little segment where we learn something. Our co-host will research and provide some information, with the only stipulation is it has to somewhat relate to fishing and be interesting. And both Jesse and I have stretched that to as far as that, can be reached. No more candlelight concerts this time, Jesse. Let's hear something interesting and fishing related.
You're just jealous that I actually know how to entertain people.
Yeah, my crayfish one
Anyway. I actually, since this episode is all about walleye fishing, I thought we would talk a little bit about walleye. So now, I think walleye is one of those fish that a lot of people have a hard time catching walleye. And I'm one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like, walleye is definitely not my strong suit of fishing. And when I see guys slam them all the time, I'm always like, how the heck are they doing that? Because me and Andrew try. We've got a lot of walleye over the years, but we need to definitely learn. That's why we have Bobby here today. But I thought we could just learn a little bit about something very special about walleye. And what do you think that special thing is, Andrew? I'm going to give you two guesses. What's the special thing about walleye that is different than most other fish?
Their eyesight?
Yes, exactly. Yep. Bobby just poked himself in the eye. So we're going to talk a little bit about their eyesight. Now, you may wonder, why do they call them walleye? Well, I have no idea, but let's talk about their vision. One of the main times that me and Andrew like to catch walleye is actually at night. Mm-hmm. It's super exciting. It's creepy as heck, but you catch big walleye because walleye actually have very good night vision compared to other fish. Now, why is that? I'm definitely going to not pronounce some of this stuff correctly, so don't judge me. I'm not a scientist. But do you know that walleye have something in their eyeballs called tapetum lucidum?
Oh, yeah, I've heard
or
of that.
Something like that. Yeah.
No.
I definitely did not pronounce that correctly. A tapetum lucidum? Let's just call it, we're going to call it TL, okay? Walleye have TL. And you know what TL is? Basically a reflective layer at the back of their eyes, right?
So a mirror.
Yeah. It's like a mirror inside of their eye. So have you ever gone like fishing or you're out on the lake and you're using a flashlight to get back to the site or to the launch and you put the flashlight in the water and you're looking around the water and you see these reflective eyes and you're like, what the heck is that? Well, that's walleye. And they have this TL or whatever the heck it is called in their eye, which again, it's a reflective layer at the back of their eye. So what happens is light goes into their eye. It hits the retina, but then any leftover light that doesn't go into the retina, which is the thing that you see out of, it actually bounces back off this reflective area and back into the retina. So they actually get a second chance at seeing the light that comes into their eye. So for someone like me or Andrew or Bobby, the light goes into our eye and whatever the retina misses, the rest of it is gone. We're not going to be able to take advantage of that light. But walleye get twice as much opportunity to see. That's why their eyes glow at night under light. And you may think it's some creepy, magic alien swimming eel in the water. It is not. It's just a common walleye, probably trying to chase down some minnows at night. Now, why does this matter so much for walleye? As you go deeper, you have to think about light. So as light goes into water, it reacts differently as it goes through air, obviously. So as light goes through water, the first thing that disappears is different colors, right? Mm-hmm. Like, for instance, different colors are being able to be seen at different depths. So one of the first colors to disappear underwater is red. Red is one of the first colors to disappear underwater.
It's similar to the reason why you see different colors at sunsets and stuff like that, is because the wavelengths can only travel so far, so certain colors become more visible. Same thing happens just, quicker with water.
Exactly. It's even quicker underwater. So red disappears, then orange, then yellows, and as you get deeper, you're eventually left with like blues and greens. And as you go down in the depths, everything just gets dark really fast. Now, underwater, as opposed to being in the air, this happens a lot faster, right? So like as we lose light in the air, things get dark pretty fast, but underwater, it's like way faster. So walleye, because they have this TL in their eye with the reflective mirror part in their eye, they can use tiny amounts of light to detect subtle movements. And they actually can see contrast where other fish just see a blur. So it's not like, oh, they're seeing night vision. They can see like minute details of like bait fish or your lure underwater when it's pitch dark outside. No, they can't. That would be crazy. But they can see actual like very clear silhouettes of minnows. And other fish will just see like blurs that have worse night vision, which is pretty interesting. They're tuned in for contrast over color. So like I mentioned, colors may not be as important at night. So oftentimes we hear, what's the best color to use at night? Black, because it's the silhouette of the contrast, right? They also are tuned in more for movement over fine detail and silhouettes over sharp images. So they're not necessarily inspecting your bait when they see it at night. Instead, they're going to react to things like shadows, small changes in lights, and flickers from the moonlight. So because of this is why subtle presentations work. Live bait, on the other hand, too, is going to be super effective because not only can they see it, but they can also smell it. And slower movements often outperform aggressive ones at night because, again, they can see silhouettes and movement, but again, they're not like having 100% night vision where they can just chase something down super fast. They're going to miss it. So you can still slow down and still catch them. That pretty much goes with any fish. I know me and Andrew have done a lot of night fishing at night for bass and walleye. And yeah, like sometimes you're like, I know Andrew caught a walleye on a jitterbug. Remember that time?
And
very
spook.
slow on the surface, but those fish were slamming it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Lazy fish, like overall. In terms of fish that are swimming in our waters, they're definitely one of the laziest, and you can even see it when you're fighting them, right? The big,
absolutely
lazy head shakes, and everybody says it feels like it's like reeling in a big wet sock or something like that.
Delicious.
A delicious wet sock.
So keep these things in mind if you are fishing in low light or at night. Walleye, like Bobby said, they're super lazy. Just make sure you have a good silhouette and reel it in slow. You don't have to, it's not like you're like Kevin Van Dam fishing spinner baits for bass in the middle of the day and you're like, reel. It's like, they can't really get a good look at it, so don't worry about that. Now, how do you compare this to other fish? So you may think, I've caught, lots of different fish at night. How much better is walleye's vision than other fish? Well, compared to other fish, smallmouth bass, for example, talked about that, they actually don't have a reflective layer on their eye. So they're built more for hunting in clear water and daylight hunting. So like oftentimes we think some of the best smallmouth fisheries is pretty clear water. Generally, you're thinking like Lake St. Clair, you have like Lake Erie. Those are like very clear and smallmouth dominate those lakes. Lake trout, now their eyesight is adapted to deep water and contrast, but it's not focused to low light. So of the different fish in Ontario and in North America, walleye are the legit best fish for finding and hunting down things at night just because of their eyes. Now, the trade-off, because they have really good vision, what does that mean during the day? So at night, they're in their prime. They can see really good. They can hunt down. They're designed to do that. And it's a time when many people target them at night because it's amazing time to catch them. But what happens during the day when it's sunny? It's like the opposite. It's literally the worst because I always say this to Andrew when we're musky fishing. Fish can't wear sunglasses. At least I've never seen one wear sunglasses. So they have to do a few things to protect their eyes. So imagine your eyes have super reflective mirrors in it to take in twice as much light. And it's clear water and super sunny. And these fish are like, and they're just get a massive headache right away. I don't know if fish get headaches, but they probably do. Don't quote me on that. So what do walleye do? Well, they oftentimes move deeper. This goes for a lot of species, but especially walleye. They might move deeper as the sun comes up. They may hide in thick weeds, under shade, near big rocks and shade. They're going to avoid bright, clear shallows. Like you don't generally like look out, off the boat dock in like 3 feet of water and clear water and see a bunch of walleye just swimming by, You might see a carp do that, but not a walleye so much. Keep that in consideration depending when you're fishing for walleye. Again, we're going to talk to Bobby more about when and where to catch them, but they can't wear sunglasses.
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, you can see pike cruising the shallows on the sand or on the rock. I've seen smallmouth do it, but walleyes are a species that you don't see do that, and that's for good reason, right?
I mean, I wish they did. They'd probably be a lot easier to catch in that scenario. So anyway, these things, the more we learn about fish, like I know last episode or 2 episodes ago, Andrew went into about the biology of like crayfish and stuff like that. And we were saying the more we learn about the different species of fish the food, the environments in the environments that we're fishing, the more better we can become as anglers. So if we keep these things in mind about walleye's eyesight, we can realize how to take that to our advantage or to how to adapt to the current weather conditions. So I know we're going to get more in depth with Bobby now, so I'm not going to go too crazy into that. But that is cool because I never really thought of it. I'm like, oh, they have shiny eyes, they see well at night, but I never realized that they actually have like a mirrored like lens underneath that shoots back twice the light into their retina. Like that must be pretty intense. We're going to have to start taking collections for some weird walleye science projects. Like, hey, MNR, I want to know exactly what a walleye sees.
We just take some old mag light flashlights apart, take those like reflective cones, put them on our sunglasses. We're like, is it working?
Walleye vision, yeah.
Well, that was good. I like it. That was fishing oriented and also interesting. He nailed it. So that sets up a good bar for what this episode is going to do. We're going to nail it. And of course we are, because we have Bobby Belmonte as our guest today. We've had him on the podcast a couple times before as well. He's always been a big hit with the listeners. We always like seeing his smiling face and his information that he gives us, because we take it and it's like we take the information from this guide that decided to come on our show, and then we use it and we fish lakes that he fishes with the information that he told us. It's amazing. And guess what?
And he still catches more fish than us.
He obviously has to keep some job security for himself, people.
Thanks for having me back on, boys. I always like coming on the podcast, so I'm excited to chat walleyes because opener is just around the corner here. So, I've actually been getting all my walleye rods tied up the last few days. It's funny, so I'm pumped for it.
That's fantastic.
It's always there's crappie and pike and jumbo perch fishing prior, but there's something about walleye opener, whether it's on, Quinte or the Kawarthas or wherever, that it's kind of like the start of the season for a lot of people, So
yeah, it's like the first weekend you get the boat out usually.
Yep.
And, me and Andrew try to get out the boat for early season pike, but it's not the same.
No, it's a big deal. And it's also usually the time where, you notice all of a sudden the boat launches are a lot busier and a lot of the locals are coming up to their cottages and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a big time of year in the fishing community, I guess.
Absolutely. I just like to mention, we did mention that we've had Bobby on the podcast a few times before. And again, if you're just starting to listen to this podcast in the last 6 months or month or year, you may not have heard those episodes. So I'm going to link those down below. The first 2 episodes we did was 2 years ago, actually. And Bobby went right into fishing. It was fall smallmouth, a little bit of walleye and muskie. It was a double episode. And then we did one last year where he talked all about crappie. And when this episode comes out, crappie will still be a thing for sure.
Absolutely.
And walleye. So definitely give those a listen. Go down, click the link. It's easy. Listen to those episodes too. And again, everything we mentioned today, I'm going to try my best to put in the show notes so you guys can just go down and click and check out what we're talking about.
It's funny you brought that up, Jesse, because I was just about to say, and Jesse's going to link Bobby's previous episodes. I'm like, I'll make Jesse do work because he edits the podcast. Just say random things. I'm going to do my best now to make as many links to previous episodes as I can now. But also, Jesse edits the podcast. He'll just cut it out that I ever made a reference to it.
Oh, yeah, it's true. Anytime Andrew says something dumb, I'm just like, I'll just cut it out.
And most of the time, I don't notice that he did.
If whoever's listening to this podcast right now, Andrew isn't even in this podcast, just me and Bobby talking back and forth.
AI is doing wonders these days.
Yeah. So I got my notepad ready. Andrew. Take notes.
So we're going to jump right into our main podcast topic. So again, we've introduced Bobby before, just as briefly. So he's a guide, 2B guiding services, right?
2B fishing guiding service. That's right.
There we go. So we'll get Jesse will have all that linked down below as well on how to contact Bobby and his social media hookups as well. We don't have to go too far into your story because they can just click on one of those previous episodes and hear all about how you got into guiding and how you did all that stuff. So let's talk walleye. Post-spawn, right after the spawn. So we're talking like May is the opener, right? For around the Kawarthas.
Yeah, second Saturday in May. So it's kind of a toss-up. Every year it's a little bit different depending on the conditions in the spring, right? Mm-hmm. I've seen some walleye openers where the walleyes are half done spawning and half still spawning. Sometimes they're all done spawning. It's always a mystery, right? Mm-hmm. So when you go out, you got to see what they're doing. But yeah, it's a tough time of year to catch them, but it's also you have to go do it. It's opener, right? You can't just not go.
And one thing I thought I'd mention as well is because we have listeners that may not be familiar with exactly the Kawarthas, because we have listeners either in other countries or down in the States. But again, we do make sure this podcast is relevant. So just briefly, how would you describe some of the water that we're going to be talking about today with Kawarthas? Because we've talked before on a podcast, walleye, Lake St. Clair, very clear, rocky bottom structure. We talked about Muskokas, right, where it's up in the Canadian Shield, like it's Canadian Shield lakes, deep, dark, rocky.
Yep.
What's the range of water that we're going to be talking about today so that people may have something similar in their own lake?
Yeah, so Kawartha lakes, they're shallow, grassy lakes for the most part. You do have some areas that are a little bit deeper, rockier, especially if you go on the outskirts of the Kawarthas. But for the most part, you're looking at shallow, grassy, some lakes where the deepest water is, 25, 30 feet max. And then some others where you do get a little bit of deeper depths, 40, 50, but still a lot of the habitat, I guess, is in that under 20-foot range. So it's shallow fishing. And it's funny too, I'm sure we'll talk about this more as the podcast goes on, but every lake in the Kawarthas kind of operates a little bit differently too, which is interesting because, it's the Kawarthas itself is very different than fishing somewhere like Lake St. Clair or the Detroit River, or, for fishing walleyes in general, like technique-wise, location-wise, all that stuff. But yeah, the Kawarthas they're unique. They're shallow, they're grassy, and unlike some of these other fisheries where you're dealing with big schools of walleye sometimes. The walleyes sometimes are riding solo in the Kawarthas, and others you maybe find packs of 10 here and there, but it's not like, on some of the fisheries where you go and, 40, 50 of them swimming on a deep shoal or something like that. So, it's very unique. But that being said, it's a great walleye fishery. It sets up great for them, and they use the habitat that they live in to their advantage. And that's, again, we'll talk more about it, but, the weeds, so much weeds, and weeds are super important in the Kawartha lakes.
Being post-spawn, traditionally spawn like up in like rivers and stuff like that. So are they going to still, like if you're fishing just post-spawn, or again, with walleye opener, it can be close to that spawning time. Are you focusing more so around river mouths? And if so, like what about the spot on the spot then?
A lot of the times, the areas where the walleyes spawn in, they're sometimes sanctuary for like a whole other week too in the Kawarthas. I'm just thinking like Buckhorn Dam, for example, like you can't fish that until the following Saturday where you can actually get right up into where they spawn, where some of them spawn. Because I think a lot of the walleyes spawn in the lake too. I don't think they all spawn in the rivers. I think there are a lot that spawn in rivers. Depends what lake you're on. But I think some spawn in the lake as well. I do find that around opener, usually the first areas that I go check out are weed flats, areas with weed close to where I'm thinking is a spawning area, whether it's a river or, a dam, because there's some current that comes through or something like that, right? But that's kind of the textbook place to look. If you're going out around opener, it's weed flats or areas that have accessible weed adjacent or close to a spawning area. That's kind of where I think we talk about this in every podcast that I do with you guys. And it's kind of doing your homework before you go fishing, right? It's kind of knowing the lake that you're going to, have a look at it, see, does it have rivers that go into it? Are there dams? Where's the current going to be? Where's the deepest part of the lake? Where could these weed flats be? These areas that have weed close to spawning bays, right? And you look at a lake, and every lake operates a little bit differently. And that's where you can kind of, dictate, okay, man, I'm going to kind of check out these areas. They look close to a river mouth. Some fish probably spawn up that river, but weed growth changes from year to year too. So, like where I caught them last walleye opener, there might not be any weed there this year, and I may have to go somewhere else, right? So that's the other thing, is you have to find the weed every opener and every season.
So you're still looking for, this would still be green weeds, like new growth, because again, it's not summertime. Now, Kawarthas can get warm pretty quick because, like I said, they are shallow and for the most part. But
yeah,
would dead weeds, like let's say a lake doesn't have any new weed growth yet, are you just looking at kind of the old weed beds maybe that are just kind of dead or broken off low?
Depends what's accessible. Usually by May, there's going to be some weed growth. And the nice thing by May is once all the ice melts, especially if there's rivers, and you get all this water moving through, a lot of that dead weed growth leaves, gets pulled out and is gone, right? So typically it is the newer weed growth that I find I fish. You're fishing shallower because, you know, you hear a lot of guys catching them on deeper weed edges as the season goes on. In the early season, because the weed isn't grown in as thick yet, that weed edge that's usually in 10 feet of water might be up in 6, and you'll find yourself fishing a weed edge in 6 feet of water. But typically, like I find myself, I'm thinking about it off the top of my head. I really don't catch them off like dead weed areas. It's usually the fresh green weed, and it may not be great weed. For a little backstory here, I'm rambling a bit, but for a little backstory, there's 2 kinds of weed that make up a lot of the vegetation in the Kawarthas. That's your pond weeds and your milfoils. And pondweed always grows in first. Pondweed is like, you know, your cabbage. There's a whole bunch of different kinds that grow in the Kawarthas, but it's that leafier palm tree looking weeds, kind of, you know, tropical looking stuff. That's your pondweed. And then your milfoil is that thicker, kind of straight stalk, kind of looks like a bushy raccoon's tail sometimes. That's your milfoil. And your milfoil is the better weed. It's always the better fish living weed. It flourishes as the season goes on, but it grows in later than the pondweed. So the pondweed sometimes is what you have in the early season with maybe a bit of milfoil, maybe no milfoil at all, but depends on the year, right? But the healthy stuff is what I work with, the green weed.
Excellent.
Because that's going to hold the bait. And then just like everything, you know, the bigger fish follow the little fish. So
it's like the theme for everything where we fish in the Kawarthas anyway. Every guest we talk to about any species, it doesn't matter. They're always like, find good weeds.
Yep.
Like spring, summer, fall.
As a little aside, this is why I really like having Bobby and guides in general, but having like a guy like Bobby on the podcast is, you ask a question, he's like, oh, I'm rambling. But in reality, he just answered the next 3 questions perfectly and concisely, which is great. So we know.
And I just want to add one thing quick. If you took that one piece of advice he just gave you, he could possibly have just saved you days of wasted effort. Okay? If you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just going to go out and fish the spots I normally catch them in the summer, you're fishing all the wrong spots. Bobby just told you exactly where to start looking that time of year. He could have just saved your whole weekend. So this is one of 7 tips. Bobby, there has to be at least 6 more tips, okay?
Thank you later, guys.
So don't be afraid for fishing some shallower water if that's where the weed growth is. That's what I got from that. If you can go for the milfoil, go for the milfoil. And make sure it's green and near current.
I'll tell you another little just kind of way to look about it, because a lot of the times, even depending on what lake you're on, even in 6-7 feet of water, you may not be able to see the bottom, right? That pondweed is growing quicker, so a lot of the times you'll see these big stalks. But if you have even a simple down imaging depth finder and you see these individual tall stalks, which are the pondweed, but then there's a solid, almost looks like a solid, dense little chunk of weed that may only be a few feet high below it, but it's something. It's not the bottom, it's something. That's usually the milfoil. And again, as the season goes on, gets bigger, and a lot of the times chokes the pondweed right out. That's why in the summer you'll see all the pondweeds brown and dead and gross, and the fish aren't there anymore. But that's kind of a way to look at it too, So when you're going along, maybe you see, I just see a few little stalks here and there. That might be okay, because if there's that solid little bit of milfoil, even if it's a foot high, a walleye is not a very tall fish. You know what I mean? A foot of milfoil is enough for them to just tuck beside or tuck in. And so, it's not too shallow. I've cracked them in 5 feet of water on opener before. 5-6 feet. That's a pretty normal depth for that time of year,
That's good to know. I'm filing it away in my mind palace. More like a beaten up shack on the edge of a lake. Before we go any further, we do have another extra special guest. And I don't mean special in the sense where he's special, but he's special because he's special. Does that make sense, Jesse?
Not at all.
Perfect. That's what I wanted. So here we have Brad Scott. You may know him as the cowboy I've had the pleasure of fishing with Brad a couple times. We've had some good success in the water, but we wanted to have him on because there's another, we're talking about walleye fishing and all that stuff. We're going to segue a little away from the Kawartha walleye fishing to a bit bigger water, but still on walleye. Brad has some pretty cool announcement he's going to make here for us. Let's hear it, Brad.
Yeah, that's right, Andrew. Hey, listen, and speaking of walleye opening weekend, it's always been a big deal. At least when I grew up, I remember my opening nights of walleye. It was Kentucky Fried Chicken, grab a bucket of chicken, stop at the Becker's, grab 2-liter bottle of pop, and we'd take the rowboat and we'd paddle out to the middle of the lake and wait till the clock struck midnight, and then we'd be fishing. And what's pretty cool is I got to announce that on opening weekend for walleye, there's going to be a Quinte Walleye Weekend Derby. And this is going to be a derby that runs both days on May 2nd and 3rd. And what's really cool about this Walleye Derby is it actually starts at midnight. And it's a live release tournament in which you can weigh in your walleye starting at 7 in the morning is the first weigh-in time, all the way until 4 p.m. on the Saturday and then again on the Sunday. So when you buy a ticket for this derby, it's $50 per person. You can literally start at midnight opening walleye on the Bay of Quinte. And it actually has 4 weigh-in stations. There's going to be one in Picton, one in Deserano, there's going to be one in Belleville, and one in Trenton. So you can fish anywhere throughout the Bay of Quinte. You can start fishing anytime. You can weigh a fish in every hour from 7 till 4, and there's prizes every hour. So it's such a family fun way to get a derby going, and you can just relax and participate at your own pleasure. You can weigh fish in at 10 in the morning. You can go home, take a break, have lunch, go back out, catch another fish at 3 in the afternoon, and weigh it in at 4 if you want, or wait till the next day. Also, it includes, there's a big pike bonus, and there's also big walleye for use, and anybody who's 15 and under is a free entry. So if they're on your boat and they get a walleye to weigh in every hour, there's a youth big fish as well. So it's kind of a very unique way to open the walleye season with this big derby. And through partners like Tackle Depot, we got Jeff Chisholm Real Estate, who's helping us with our leaderboard. We also got Williams Hotels, so people who want to stay in the Bay of Quinte area. Williams Hotels has got all kinds of discount bookings for that, and Carl Cox RV. Everybody's pitching in, all the different towns that I mentioned, plus the townships. And it's going to be a big, basically Bay of Quinte wide celebration for walleye opening. I'm really excited for it. Tackle Depot being a big part, a big sponsor in it, it definitely makes the whole weekend work really well for sure. And in fact, that's where you're going to go and find your entries, where you can buy your ticket to enter the derby is at tackledepot.ca. Right on the homepage, there's a button there, and you can just press it and you can purchase your ticket remotely online. And all you have to do is just show up in the Bay of Quinte, one of our 4 weigh-in places throughout the day, and bring a fish in. Every hour, there's $1,000 to be won. And then there's also a Crestliner boat, Mercury motor and trailer for the biggest fish for the whole weekend.
I need that boat, Andrew. Let's go.
I need that boat to do the tournament. Does that work?
Yeah, you literally could have work to do on Saturday if you wanted, or work or family event to do on Sunday. You go out midnight Saturday, weigh your fish in 7 o'clock Sunday morning, and you're sitting in church by 9.
That's amazing.
It's a pretty good concept.
I was going to say, I'm going to link everything below in the show notes, everything that Brad just talked about. He's going to send it all over so we can link it down below. If you're interested in doing that, that's pretty fun. I know a lot of people get pretty competitive, but this isn't one of those things. This is slightly competitive, but mostly just a lot of fun. So it's definitely an event, even something me and Andrew would do, because we're not the best at fishing, but who knows? You could win $1,000 or a boat. Or more.
And the great thing is, you don't need to catch a whole bunch of walleye. Like, you go to a lot of like a bass tournament, you don't have to catch one good bass. You have to catch, 5 good bass to win the tournament. Whereas this one, let's say you catch one fish, but it's a good one, you can win.
Yeah, that's right. So I like those odds too. And it does have a lot to do with it. I mean, this isn't necessarily a tournament of skill. It's also strategy as well, right? So you can have a couple fish in your live well. You can weigh them in throughout hourly weigh-ins. If you have one that wins one, you can have one that wins another one, and it's likely anyone can win 2 of the prizes throughout the weekend, 2 first places if you play your strategy right with the different weigh-in times. So, and it's a big family fun event as well. So I mean, that's what we're totally with the youth prizes and all that, and a bonus big pike prize too. So don't forget anybody who subsequently hooks into a big pike like we normally do. And if it doesn't bite you off, make sure you're bringing it in for a weigh-in.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot for coming on. And again, this is one of those things where if you're hearing the episode, you're listening to the podcast, you're getting all excited about walleye fishing. And here is your first opportunity to do, a bit of competitive, but also family fun walleye fishing with the chance of rewards. And if not, enjoy your weekend out there in the Bay of Quinte. Get some good gear and
grab a bucket of chicken and a 2-liter bottle of pop and go hit the water.
The Brad Scott diet.
Yes. Body by KFC.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you.
So let's go back to walleye fishing. So we know we want good weeds. What are some presentations and techniques that you use to fish these weed lines effectively then?
Yeah, so opener is nice because you have some wiggle room, right? The weeds aren't too thick yet. You can throw some other baits. Crankbaits are great, lipless cranks or just shallow diving cranks. I like lipless a lot because you can tie a lipless on and just kind of run it all day depending on whatever weed line you're on. You want to fish it in 6 feet. You want to fish it in 8, you want to fish it in 5. Just adjust your retrieve speed, right? It dives whatever depth you let it go down to. But the other ones that I like are just like a slow float, shallow crankbait. And I'll crank it until I start feeling those weed tips and then just kind of adjust my retrieve. So I'm keeping it around that top of the weed zone. So crankbaits are a great choice. Jerkbaits are good too. I don't find myself throwing jerkbaits on all the lakes. I know that some people really crack them good on jerkbaits on other fisheries, especially with, forward facing sonar and stuff. It's a great technique for that stuff. But for me, it's a lot of crankbaits, a lot of swim baits, and then something slow like a Ned rig or even just a swim bait fished on bottom, like dragged along on bottom. Depending on the mood the walleyes are in. I mean, in a perfect world, you're going to throw those moving baits and they'll chew them, right? They'll chase them down, they'll chew them. You reel it by their face, they react to it. But sometimes you have to slow down for fish, just like any other species. And that's when like a dragging a swim bait or something along these weed edges or just through the weeds and letting it go down and making sure you're making that bottom contact, that's big too. And the other technique that I use a lot is a hair jig, a bucktail jig, which is a very popular technique Kawarthas walleyes, but opener, it's not always the deal because you don't have that weed growth that is perfect for it. When you have those nice milfoil beds, game over. Hair jig is, Jesse's holding one up right now to the camera, and that's the deal once you get those real thick weed clumps growing in. But
come Andrew.
It's Big Jim.
This literally
I know
is
it's Big Jim.
Those are the exact ones I use too. Big Jim's, Jeff's jigs, Jeff Penner, who's another local guy, Southern Ontario, makes some good jigs.
He makes really good jigs.
He's going to be psyched that we're giving him a shout out right now.
Imagine if we just got these guys to duke it out. Big Jim versus Jeff's jigs. Just kidding. I think Big Jim would win. No offense, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff.
They should be doing one of those at CanCast one year, eh? A Jeff Penner versus Big Jim showdown.
Yeah. I'd pay to see that.
Yeah.
I'll talk to Kyle for next year.
But yeah, hair jig is key too. But early season, it's not always the best thing to use. The moving baits seem to be a little bit better. Swim bait and a lipless crank have been kind of my 1-2 punch the last couple seasons at least. That's usually what I can get it done with on guides or even just fishing myself. So
those baits are so easy to use too, right?
Yeah. The biggest thing, and this is another kind of thing that people kind of don't always do with walleye, and that is the slowing down. So with a moving bait, you can get carried away. Even I do it sometimes where you're just chucking winding and that bait is riding too high in the water column. But the key is just having a nice slow retrieve and trying to keep that bait closer to the bottom for the walleyes. Because more times than not, you're going to get bites if you can keep your bait closer to the bottom. Some species are just better at chasing stuff than others, right? Like pike, you'll see it all the time, right? How many times have you guys caught pike right beside the boat as you're reeling up your bait, right? But it doesn't happen with walleyes nearly as often. Maybe when the sun's going down, but midday, got to keep the bait slow. But they're super easy to use. You just have to you watch that retrieve speed, right? And if you can dial in that slow retrieve speed, you're golden. You're good.
And are there any specific colors that you tend to lean towards? Because I know, like for hair jigs, we're always told like black or black and green or black and orange. Like it's always like black is like the main color on a hair jig that we've often heard. But first, let's say like crankbaits and stuff like that. Is there something that you like to lean towards that you had success with?
Depends on the lake. A lot of the lakes that I fish, sturgeon, rice, there's something about a chartreuse with the walleyes, I find, or just a green that pops. Maybe it's because of the perch that they're eating. Perch is their favorite food. But I think across the board, and for everybody who's listening who kind of has followed me and kind of listened to my videos and stuff, I'm a big advocate of just keep it natural. So when in terms of swim baits or, finesse baits that I'm using, green pumpkin, just keep it nice and simple. You cannot go wrong with a natural looking bait. Maybe there's days where if I put on a pink jig head, I'd do better, right? Like maybe, but I just run a natural looking profile, clean, black or green pumpkin. Keep it natural and you don't have to confuse yourself too much with color. I think location and stuff is way more important than color, personally. So natural is always good. But with crankbaits and stuff, yeah, like a chartreuse is something that I definitely, if I'm going out on a given day, I'll have my natural stuff. And then maybe I'll have a perch crankbait, like a chartreusey greenish crankbait on too, just to try. And if they're going on that, then keep going with it. But confidence-wise, I'm just going to keep it natural, right?
Mm-hmm. It makes sense, though, because these fish, they're used to eating, say, like something that looks like a perch. And they're going to be eating that every day, regardless of what the weather conditions are or the light conditions are. Yep. So maybe they can see a brighter color better in some circumstances, but generally those fish are still going to have to adapt to be able to chase and eat fish, even when they're not as visible. And as we learn, they have really good eyes. So
yeah. They do.
So Bobby's telling you don't need 5,000 colors. You can tell he doesn't work for a bait company. Good job.
It's funny though, because I think on some fisheries, like that definitely changes. Like I even know, like you see it with guys that like troll Quinte a lot. They'll have those divers that they're trolling Quinte and they got all these different colors, Barbie and, clown, all these
Wonder
different crazy
Bread,
ones.
Purple clown.
Right? Yeah, Taru Murata, he's always talking about the Barbie ones, Wonder Bread, all that stuff, right? And I think on other fisheries, my opinions of color would change, especially for walleyes. Bass is different, but with walleyes, like, yeah, some of those lakes, like you got to be throwing something pink or chartreuse or purple or crazy stuff, right? But Kawarthas, I think it's just because you're not getting quite as many as some of those other fisheries, right? Pressure too. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pressure in the Kawarthas spots across the board. There's not as many as some of the other big water fisheries, right? Less fish. So keeping it natural is always a good play in this area, I think. But prove me wrong. Catch them on a pink and purple swim bait. And
if anyone has a pink and purple swim bait, it's Andrew. I thought before we went on, we could just talk very briefly, all of us, the weirdest baits you've caught a walleye on.
Sanko. That's weird, kind of, I guess.
My PB walleye, this isn't even a weird bait, but this is just a bait you wouldn't normally throw. My PB walleye, 29-inch, I caught it pike fishing on this exact spinnerbait. It's one of those Booyah pikey spinnerbaits, chartreuse blade, white willow-leaf blade. So I've caught a few walleye and spinnerbaits.
Yeah, honestly, me too, man. And big ones, not small ones. Actually, it's way back. I haven't caught them here in years, but the Indian River on Rice Lake, a lot of people probably know that spot. It's a very popular spot. There's a boat launch there that I'm sure a lot of people have used. And I used to catch walleyes around opener in the Indian River. This one day I was fishing with a buddy and he threw a spinnerbait around and he started catching a couple big ones. I was like, holy crap. And I was using my crankbait and stuff and it wasn't really doing it. Started throwing the spinnerbait. Next thing you know, that's just, what worked. Like, yeah, it's definitely not just a bass or pike bait. That thing catches them too, for sure.
I caught one on Zara. I've got one on Jitterbug, but I caught one on the Zara Spook as well. It's going night fishing for largemouth.
Wild.
He's the topwater walleye guy.
Yeah, that is impressive. That's you're like a unicorn, buddy.
He's caught multiple, even in one night.
Yeah.
Wow.
My biggest walleye though came on a big blade chatterbait. We were going for pike, and I caught it on a big bait.
I can see that.
I let it just like swing down and hang. It was staring at him like I can't. It's right beside the canoe. I can't do anything now, and it just like ate it while it was hanging in front of his face.
I think the coolest lure I caught a walleye on was I was fishing fall muskie, and I caught a walleye about, I don't know, what was it, 24
I think
inches?
it's 24 inches, yeah.
On this 7.5-inch muskie glide bait, and absolutely hammered it. Like, I thought I had a muskie. It hammered it. And I set the hook, got it close to the boat, and it was it was a good sized walleye. And I was like, what? And it literally had it like fully T-bone, like a 5/0 right in its mouth. I was like trying to pull it out. But they all have big stuff. Some of those fish, they eat big things, right?
Have you caught one on a Shadzilla Junior?
No, but I was fishing with Mike, Waterwolf Lures Mike, 2 years ago on the St. Lawrence. He was trolling a 9.5-inch Shadzilla, like the full musky size one, and he caught a 30-inch walleye.
Yeah, I mean, that's a top predator at that point too, right? Like nothing's really messing with a 30-incher, and yeah.
And Mike pulled a total power move. He was just like not impressed at all. Because we were musky fishing, but I was like losing my mind. I was like, that's one of the biggest walleye I've ever seen. It was this giant walleye, and he just like scooped up with the net. He's like, it's a walleye. So he takes a hook out, throws it back. I'm like, no, picture.
Yeah. I ended up getting my PB this past season on a Shadzilla Junior.
Nice.
Musky fishing, again, full on 100-pound braid, 18-inch, 150-pound fluoro leader, and just cracked it just like a muskie would, and we caught it on video and everything. It's funny.
And those are like they're not huge baits, but they're sizable baits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So don't be afraid. Maybe not early season, but you never know.
Yeah. I don't know how your day would go if you went out and chucked that on walleye opener. And
you see me with binoculars? Is that guy musky fishing? Call the MNR.
The average Ontario angler's told me to throw big baits. So
read the disclaimer in the podcast description, people.
So far this year, you had weather keep flip-flopping. Can't decide if it wants to be, winter still or midsummer, and really it's barely spring, So we can expect more every year. There's always major temperature changes. How do you find that affects the fishing? Like, what do you do when you get these consistent days is what you want, but when you get these inconsistent weather patterns?
Like the cold snaps and
like
stuff.
A cold snap, or like really hot weather rolls in or something. What is the next kind of steps that you take to try and get that bite back?
Well, for this time of year, if it warms up, I think that's a good thing. Like when you start getting warm spikes, the fish start chewing, especially until you end up getting into those real summer temps and it gets too hot. Mm-hmm. But in the spring, when you got those warm days, I'm just thinking even about the trips I had last year. We caught them good on some sunny, warm days in May and into early June. I think cold snaps can hurt you more with walleye, especially in the spring, because again, you want warming trends in the spring, right? You want the warming trends to get those water temps to start rising, get the bait spawning and flourishing and doing what the bait fish do, and progress the season, get these fish off the post spawn, get them chewing. So when you get those cold days, I think that's when it gets tough. That's when, and I mean, that's fishing, right? That's Mother Nature. She's going to throw you some cold, crappy, crummy days, and you just have to kind of slow down even more. That's when I'm going to pick up something like a bottom bait. You're not going to be, I don't think you're going to be crushing them on cranks and swim baits necessarily, unless you're fishing them slow. Every day is different. But on those cold days, if it's tough, if they're not hitting those moving things, I'm gonna fish something slower, whether it's a very slow jerkbait retrieve, whether it's dragging a Ned rig or swim bait along the bottom, or whether it's using my electronics and trying to find, new areas to try to target them and just doing stuff like that. That's kind of what you have to do, roll with the punches on those days. And you're going to have tough days with walleye. That's part of it, Just like you're going to have tough days with muskies, you're going to have tough days with fishing across the board. Mm-hmm. You are going to have tough days with walleyes, but those warm streaks are great. If I see, say you're cruising at every day's like 7, 8, 9 degrees, right? And then you have a day where it's going to peak up to it's going to be 21 today. I bet you they're going to chew. Especially if it's, you get a little bit of that walleye chop that everybody talks about. That little bit of walleye chop is a good thing, folks. You see those flags blowing, get your baits. But yeah, no, warming trends are good. Cold snaps, they suck, but
it is what it is.
It is what it is. That's right. slow down more, drag. Live bait would probably be a good choice for days like that too, you know? Pull out the old pickerel rig and drag a minnow around, right? I don't live bait fish myself, but I bet you there's guys that do it that can still catch them pretty good doing that.
And what about, like we talked about the Kawarthas having pressure. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is sometimes when, I know Jess and I, when we talk about pressure, it may not always be fishing pressure, but it's really like activity on the water. And
yeah,
like once you hit like May 2-4 and everyone opens their cottages and everyone wants to take their boat for a rip, the lake, even on a calm day, gets huge waves coming across from wakes and stuff. Like it's a busy lake. Is it still possible to catch fish if, you know, that's the time that you have to fish is during these higher boat traffic times?
Yeah, it's possible. You may have to adjust. So say you have, I'll use just a little example here. So you have a weed line that is like on a very cottage populated shoreline, right? And you go there in the morning or days where it's quiet and you're catching them there all the time, right? Everything's great. And you go out there and you got Buddy with the Sea-Doo cruising over your weed line at 1 p.m. and you can only fish to 4, let's say, and you're like, great, right? Say that's your spot. That's where you want to kind of target. Maybe you're in a canoe or a kayak and you can't, you know, row all the way down to the other side of the island or whatever to get to new water. First thing I would do is just kind of push out deeper from the spot. Those walleyes, sometimes, especially if we're talking early season, I've seen fish just kind of push off a structure. And I'm thinking more, maybe the weed line wasn't the best example for this thing, but like a hump, let's say, right? A hump is another primo location to find fish on any of the Kawartha lakes, especially if you got some weed on top of the hump, some early weed growth. So you don't catch them on that hump when you go out. Check off the hump, because there's a lot of times if they get spooked off that feeding ground, that hump, they're gonna just mosey down to the base and mope around the base. So yeah, you may have to again pick up a slower technique, right? You maybe can't buzz that swim bait or that crankbait over that hump because you got Buddy driving over it, right? But maybe you can throw a little swim bait on a ball head and throw it out in 15 feet just off of the hump and drag it around a bit and see if you can get some bites that way. Or set up on the hump, and I'm just spitting out ideas, right? You get something like a snap jig or a jigging wrap or something and kind of drift around that hump snapping under your boat and kind of try to locate fish that way. If you don't have the electronics to really, you know, help you in situations like that too. When I started fishing walleyes, I didn't have any of the electronics I had on my boat. I had a depth finder and that was it. But what I did have was those orange buoys that you can buy from, you know, Canadian Tire, Bass Pro Shop, whatever. And I can't tell you how many times I would be, again, I didn't have spot lock on my trolling motor. So I'd be kind of going around and I'd catch a walleye and I'd drop the buoy, and the buoy, you know, a thing goes down and then that buoy stays in that spot. And then I'd know, okay, I caught a fish there. I'm going to just mosey around this area. And I'd sit on that area for a while, just, you know, moseying 50 feet that way, 100 feet that way, but stay around that zone, right? And a lot of the times when you find these walleyes, they're going to be on a certain area, right? Like you may not have to go far to get bites. You may not crack one on every cast if it's tough conditions, but you may catch one every half an hour. I've had trips like that where I know they're on a spot. They're not aggressive, but you just keep casting at them, and every half an hour, oh, there's one, you know, and you slowly pick apart the ones that are on that spot. So
you just blew Jesse's mind. Half an hour in one spot with no bite. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
For bass, like that would be wild for bass, especially if there was none there. But for walleyes, especially if it's like a big weed flat spot, like nothing precise, big weed line or something like that, sometimes you can just sit there and cast, same spot, nothing, and all of a sudden, oh, there's one, right? Like it's funny how it works, but that's what walleyes are. They're lazy and kind of a weird species, very different, you know, unique.
That's a great way to politely call them stupid.
Before we get into our next kind of couple questions for Bobby here, we actually have another guest that's going to be joining us. And this guy, he's a gem. This guy, really nice. If you ever see him at the trade shows, at the fishing shows, it's fantastic. And the reason why I say if you see him at the fishing shows is because there's some big, exciting news that he is going to drop for us here. Maybe you've heard it. Hopefully you have. But if not, We're going to talk to Dean here from Blackfly Lures.
All right, so now we are going to be interviewing someone very special. His name is Dean. Now, you probably don't know who Dean is because he's very shy, but Dean is the guy that runs Blackfly Lures. How's it going, Dean?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm super awesome now that you're here, Dean. You have a giant announcement, don't you, Dean?
We got a big one, but first I want to thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. You guys do a ton for the fishing community, so thank you guys for that. I know these aren't easy to do and lots of editing, so I appreciate that. This year is our 25th year. I own Blackfly Lures, and it's our 25th anniversary of that. So,
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Been doing this since I was a kid. And we wanted to do something special for the 25th year, so I ended up making a show. So we're hosting the North Bay Fishing and Outdoors Show, the first one this year on May 3rd.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been exciting. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
There's a lot of shows every year, but I noticed that most of the shows are down in the Toronto area or maybe Kankas's in Peterborough, but there isn't many shows up that way.
Exactly. There are some great shows, but there's not that flagship outdoor show. So we were hoping to bring that to a community where everybody does something outside. So it's fishing, hunting, camping. Everybody up here does something outside. So it doesn't make sense there wasn't a show up here, and there's a ton of great shows, but in the South, but it's great to have something local. So that's kind of what we were hoping to do with that.
I know you said before you had a bunch of like cool guests coming on the show as well.
Yeah, we've got a really cool lineup of speakers doing seminars. We've got Curtis, who's doing a how to plan your backwoods trip. So he's done solo canoe trips and he's helping plan that. We've got a wildlife photographer who's doing a wildlife photography 101, and she's done really cool things. Like she's gone to Uganda and taken pictures of gorillas. So she'll be a really cool one. Our keynote speaker is Adam Schultz, who does solo Arctic expeditions in canoes and charts uncharted rivers, and he tracked down a lost legend in the exploration community and followed his path after 100 years. And so that'll be a pretty cool experience. He's a great speaker, so we're excited to have him. And he's doing a book signing afterwards.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned before that you had a bunch of activities for kids too. So why don't we talk about that?
Yeah. So the big thing for me is getting kids involved in the outdoors. At the Sportsman Show, we always do a kids make your own spinnerbait thing. And I kind of wanted to amplify that and we've got our kids trail pass where we've got a bunch of hands-on activities for kids. So we've got Whose Poop Is That, where you match. That one always gets a laugh. So you match animal scat with what animal it was. We've got an age the fish thing where you look at the otolith of a fish and you can figure out how old it is, kind of like rings on a tree. We've got tree ID. We've got those little battery-powered cars. The local Chevy dealers bringing some battery-powered cars to do a course. So all kinds of fun stuff for kids. We've got some stuff for adults too. We've got Daiwa coming to do a rod testing zone. We've got kind of a truck champion of the North, again, with our local Chevy dealer, where, safely hook up a trailer and guess the load and everything on a trailer. So there's lots to do for the whole family. It'll be a pretty fun day.
It sounds like a full day of activities for sure.
That's the idea. It's not, if you don't love the fishing and outdoor stuff, but you go along with a partner or a friend or whatever, it could be a long day. So the idea is to make it fun for everybody and all levels of expertise in fishing and outdoors and all that stuff.
That's amazing. It sounds super fun. Where can people find more information about this? You got a website?
Yeah, it's northbayoutdoorshow.ca. And we've got the bios of all our speakers. You can read more about them. We've got our vendor list and all the fun activities up there. So you can find everything you need to know about that.
Awesome. And again, I'm going to link everything below in the show notes. So you can just go down quick, click the link, check it out.
Awesome.
And you have an Instagram account too. I know I just started following it the other day. So
there's Instagram and Facebook as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you know what? I have to add this one thing because this is something that I picked up at the Sportsman Show. While you're up there, make sure you check out the new Blackfly Lures Nomad bladed jig, because I bugged Dean forever to make a bladed jig. And I was like, dude, you make awesome spinnerbaits, make a bladed jig. And he was like, okay. So he finally did. And they're really cool. I'm really excited to try these out this year. So
years in the making.
I'm excited.
Yep.
Years in the making. So anyway, thanks Dean for jumping on. I know Dean's a shy guy, but I made him come on the podcast under force.
Well, I appreciate you having me. And again, you guys have a great platform for all the local Ontario bait makers and the fishing community in general. So I really appreciate you guys having me.
No worries. I'll send you the bill later.
Perfect. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, man.
Wow. That was awesome, Dean. What did you think of that, Bobby?
Well spoke.
the North Bay Fishing and Outdoor Show. That's pretty cool. I know there's, we're pretty much past most of the shows that happen down in the, the Southern Ontario, so to say, like the GTA. Like we had, the Spring Fishing and Boating Show, the Sportsman Show, CanCast, all fantastic shows. But there isn't really anything up in that area. So if you're in that area or you can make the drive, I think it's going to be a legit show. All the stuff that he was telling us, super cool. But yeah, check it out. Again, links down below. Check out the show. And if you go, we won't be there, unfortunately. We have a fishing trip that weekend. But yeah, if you do go, send us some pictures of all the booty that you got. The lures and stuff, not people that you take pictures of.
It's like Jesse.
So let's go back to something I won't get in trouble for, and that's talking about walleye fishing. You were talking there about having some basic gear, having just a depth finder, and being able to make use of buoys and stuff like that. And for a lot of, myself included, but for a lot of our listeners, like we may not have access to nice electronics. I'm excited to be getting a decent unit this year that'll have like side scan and stuff like that. But for ones who maybe, are looking to get into a good electronics for helping to improve their fishing, and if walleye is their preferred species, what are maybe a couple setups or a couple things that you would recommend to look for?
Yeah, so I mean, whenever I talk to people about electronics, I always say, get the best you can afford. You know what I mean? If it's something like just getting a unit that has mapping and downscan, that is more than enough to be able to get out there and catch some fish. We've all kind of talked about the mapping apps that you can get on your phone, which are a very useful tool. If you're a fisherman of any skill level, you should get these topographic maps on your phone, whether it's a Navionics or a Garmin app. That's a huge tool in itself. Just seeing the contours of the lake, kind of learn how to read a contour map and understand the depth changes that go along with it. And that goes a long way for sure, especially too, if we talk about when it comes to weed growth in the Kawarthas, your weed growth is not going to extend past 15 feet. Like most of the time it cuts off at 12, 13 feet max, So you look at a contour map and you kind of see those areas, you can start to dictate, okay, somewhere in this kind of zone of these depths is where my weed line's going to be, or a hump or whatever, right? So mapping, everybody should have it. I think that's the number one thing you guys should go for when you're getting into the electronic world is some sort of mapping. And then just get whatever you can get past that is great. Downscan is great because you can see the weeds when you're driving around, right? And you can see, like I was talking about earlier, even if it's minimal weed growth, but you can see there's like a foot or two of it down on the surface or on the bottom, great. But then if you can get some side scan, that makes life even easier, right? Because then you can drive around and mark these weed edges as you go. And then all the way up to obviously having live scope, which is what it is, right? Go get the best you can or whatever you like fishing with, because that's a whole other debate in itself, is the whole electronic debates nowadays. But yeah, any electronics help. And then, like I said, when I started, I didn't really have anything. I had mapping on my phone. I had a depth finder that I could see that weed growth that I was talking about, just a small little, like a hummingbird. I forget what it was called. But it had just your simple down scan. And then I used buoys and stuff. That's a great thing to use. Or the other thing with walleye fishing is just drifting is not always a bad thing either, right? Drift and cover water. But electronics, I mean, get whatever you can.
It definitely does help. And again, like me and Andrew have been fishing for a long time. We didn't have any electronics. And maybe like more than 10 years ago, I got one of those Striker 4 Garmin, the little ones with the 4-inch vertical screen.
Yeah.
And maybe that was even longer ago, but we used that for years. Like it was one of those ice fishing balls. We used it ice fishing. We'd put it in the boat with the suction cup on the side of the canoe. Yep. And that didn't have mapping on it at all. It just literally showed you the depth and the temperature. And that was very helpful at the time. We were like, yeah, this is amazing. And then eventually we upgraded. I actually randomly had my unit here, but I have one of these like Garmin Striker Vivid 7 SV. So this has side imaging, down imaging, and regular like 2D. And it is true, like down imaging is a lot more detailed than your regular 2D. And there's different, sometimes it's better to use one over the other, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's cool. Me and Andrew were just at a few months ago or last month at the Sportsman Show. And the guy was showing us like, oh, this is down view at the Hummingbird booth. Mm-hmm. And he's like, this is a tree. And you can see like all the arms of the tree on down imaging, but on side or on regular 2D, it was just like a big blob.
Right.
On 2D, it honestly, like, he's like, what do you think this is? He showed me the 2D first, and it looked like some like red like bands, like bars going through it, and like a big blue mottled bait ball. So I'm like, is that some like, fish in a bait ball or something, And it's like, no, and it shows the down view, and it's literally like a highly detailed tree. It's like, interesting. I was way off. And there are no fish on that tree.
Kind of like, I guess that's kind of like the other thing to say with the whole electronic topic is when you get whatever electronic setup you have, learn how to use it. Learn how to get the most out of it that you can, right? Know everything there is to know about the unit. Watch some YouTube videos. Take it all in, because the better you can utilize whatever it is you have, the better your fishing experience can be.
Absolutely. And just to add into the point of Bobby being a guide and a knowledgeable one at that, the times that I've gone fishing with Bobby, again, I don't have live scope, but Bobby has live scope, and I was like, if I ever get it in the future, like it's pretty complex, like to figure out like all the settings and actually how to use it. You may look at a video and be like, yeah, it's easy enough to use, but there is a lot of things that you have to actually get down right to be effective using it. And I was like picking Bobby's brain the whole time. I was like, I have no clue. Like, what am I looking at? And he's like, oh, you got to get the angle right, and this, and the,
even the wiring for these
like
units can alter too, because I know with live scope itself, it has such a high demand for power. Like if you have your trolling motor and everything on the same battery, you're going to start getting interference with the imaging too. So even something like that, if someone has this unit and who just hooked it up just to whatever they had, you may not be getting the best use out of what you bought just by how it's wired in.
Exactly. So if you do want to learn how to use your equipment better, and you go on a guided trip, that's another thing you can pick their brain at as you're fishing. You can learn about the fishing, but you can also learn about how to use the technology that maybe you have, but on his boat, he can be like, yeah, this is how you use live scope better. This is how you use side imaging. Some of this stuff, it sounds basic, but it's awesome to have someone that uses it all the time and can be like, no, it's this easy, and show you how to do it. And it's like, it clicks in your head. You're like, oh, that's easy, Like when me and Andrew are trying to figure out how to use like side scan properly, now I can find weed edges and stuff. I'm like, this is actually pretty easy, but it can be, daunting if you're not into electronics. Like I'm not super into electronics. Andrew's the genius one in this, fishing partnership.
Yeah, that happens all the time for me too. Like every season I have a bunch of people that come out and I end up getting questions, be it electronics or, even they want to see something with side scan, and maybe even the spots that we're fishing, side scan's not really that useful, but I'll take them over to an area and say, okay, here's a weed edge. This is kind of what I'm looking for. Here's a hump. This is how I scan a hump, all the way up to live scope. Because like you said, it's just like anything else. You got to spend your time using it in different spots and different situations. And the more you play around with it, the better you get at using it. Right. So just like anything.
You just see me looking at Bobby. I'm like, hey, can I just look at your mapping for a second? Just taking pictures of all those GPS spots.
It's like my tip for if you don't have access to electronics is just fish 30 feet off of Bobby's stern. And then just kidding. Don't do that,
please.
That's when Bobby starts bringing out his razor blade embedded egg sinkers and starts whipping them at you.
For the record, I don't have any of those.
Yes, no.
But Griff probably does.
No comment.
So just so everyone knows, Griff is some crazy guy that fishes with Bobby all the time. But if you knew what Griff was, what he was, you would understand.
Should keep that part in. He'll love that.
And I said I wasn't going to get in trouble talking about walleye, and here we are.
Griff is now an it.
Yeah. Talking about now terminal tackle or terminal gear, right? Or rod, reel, line. What's a combo, or here's maybe a better question. As a guide, I'm sure you have one combo that you probably have multiples of, because you know that it's budget friendly for yourself and it is also, versatile, useful. What's that combo that you would have in your boat to give to people to do walleye fishing on the Kawarthas?
Yeah, a spinning setup, because you can do a lot more on a spinning rod than you can do strictly on a bait caster. 7-foot, medium, fast action. That is the most all-round combo in terms of like spinning tackle, like you can do a lot with that rod. I'd be quicker at just listing the techniques you can't do on that pretty much, But yeah, then a 2,500 size or 3,000 size, whatever you want, spinning reel, 10-pound braid, connect to an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader. And that is something that I haven't touched on in this podcast yet. But with walleyes, you 100% should be using fluorocarbon. There was a time in the Kawartha lakes where I would use straight braid for them. That's just how I fished. This is, this is a long time ago, but straight braid was not it wasn't an abnormal thing to just fish straight braid, and you Sharpie out, 18 inches of your line or whatever, and you could catch pretty much whatever. But with the pressure that is around now, fluorocarbon should definitely be something that you guys are learning to use, whether you can go straight fluorocarbon on a setup or connect to your braid, which is what I like to do because you get the sensitivity and the durability and the casting, the better performance in casting with the braid. But that invisibility for the leader is so important for these finicky walleye.
How long of a leader would you put on then?
Depends where I'm fishing for sure, but I usually just get in the habit, especially with especially with guiding, so I don't have to retie every few minutes if you break off dragging or whatever. I just tie like a 10-foot lead most of the time. Sometimes like what I'll do when I'm spooling it is just kind of watch when the knot comes down the rod and then, you see the knot right above your reel. Mm-hmm. I kind of stop there and then strip out a little bit more and tie my lure on. And it comes out to probably about a 10 to 12 foot leader. Then you can break off a few times and you're still good, right? But yeah, it's better than running a short lead too, right? Excellent. And we've seen it many days. Griff, who we were just talking about, Griffin loves to run short leaders because I always tell him to run long leaders. And he's like, short leaders. So he'll run like a foot or a foot and a half. And then it usually takes 2 or 3 fish and then he's retying because he's like, oh yeah, it doesn't work. So yeah, long leads better than short leads and gives you some wiggle room for the reties.
We need to get Griff on the podcast and just call the podcast What Not to Do with Griff.
Yeah, well, that's he's great for learning, right? Like if somebody was to just kind of watch Griffin and I on the boat for a day and Griffin tries to, I'm like, dude, throw the green pumpkin. And he's like, chartreuse and white, and he's trying. And then, yeah, it usually results in him going, okay, Bobby, and doing it. But yeah.
Full reveal this
we
episode.
all have a friend like that.
Hey, I resemble that remark.
I was going to say, I was fishing. It wasn't with Andrew. It was with my buddy Zach, who doesn't really fish that much. And we were fishing early season bass, zone 20 last year. Where we fished for largemouth, the only 2 baits you need is legit a chatterbait and like a jig. That's all. You don't even need anything else. Like a chatterbait is all you need. And I was like, dude, chuck a chatterbait. And I was slamming fish. And he was like, no, I want to catch it on the lure I brought. And he had all these weird lures that he got out of like a discount bin at like sale or something. And I was like, dude, don't even chuck those. Like, don't. And he's like, oh, I'll catch something on it. I think I got up to 11 bass until he finally put on a chatterbait and he caught one on his second cast. I was like, see what I'm telling you, man?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So I like this. This is a great segue from people struggling while fishing to do the right thing. We're going to talk about some struggles that people have or why do you think so many people blank when they're walleye fishing? What's a big mistake that you see people making?
So I think I touched on this one a little bit earlier, and it's one that I just see a lot when I'm taking newer fishermen, beginners out fishing for walleye specifically, and that's keeping the bait lower in the water column. It is very easy to kind of lose focus as the day progresses and just kind of start cranking the bait. Next thing you know, it's coming in 2 feet below the surface. And if you're fishing in 7, 8, even 5, 6 feet of water, that's maybe too high for the fish. Walleye are a stay closer to the bottom species in the Kawarthas. Maybe the bigger ones, that rule kind of is different. They do like to, cruise a little bit more higher off the bottom, kind of like pike and muskies. But the smaller ones, the average sized walleyes, they're kind of belly on bottom or right above the bottom. So you got to keep those lures down there more in their face. You're going to catch more of them doing that. That's a big thing I see people do. It's just reeling too fast. I see it with different species too, but walleyes in particular, because you have to be very slow for them, almost annoyingly slow at times. That rule that people say is slow down. And when you think you've slowed down, slow down more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It-
hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that.
It's the one thing I can hold over Jesse. Like, he struggles with that.
Yeah. It sucks, but it's definitely true. There's truth to it. So that would be a big one. And then the other thing I would say is just with walleyes, it can be a waiting game too. In the Kawarthas, I've seen it many a time where they are a bite window fish. And that's not just morning and evening, low light hours. Those are great times to target them. But there's been many a day where it's like, you're out there and then 10 to 11 o'clock, for example, they turn on, they're chewing, or maybe you get nothing all day and at 3 o'clock, a little bit of a wind comes in, that walleye chop, and they start chewing, right? So the other thing is just kind of be patient with it and put time in. A lot of people go out and, I tried a few hours in the morning and I didn't get any. But if you can stay out a little longer and kind of wait for one of those bite windows, it can really pay off because it can go from 0 to 100 real quick.
It's like fish decide when they want to bite. They don't bite when you want them to bite.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Isn't it kind of like musky fishing? Like a lot of people I've gone with, it's like they have their spots. Say there's 4 spots. Like these are the 4 spots on this lake that there's muskie on 100%. And then you just like go between the spots and just hopefully when you get to one of those spots, a window opens. Because you could fish the same spot. You're like, this is a really good spot. Nothing, nothing, nothing. You try it 3 times. The 4th time you try it, a window happens to open up and boom, you catch 2 fish there in like 10 minutes. But the other times, nothing. You didn't even see anything. The fish is like absolutely negative. It's like that. Man, I hate that.
Kawarthas are so prone for that. Like Kawartha, big time. And I tell guests all the time with certain species, like, we're just waiting for a bite window. Like that's the key. Wait for a bite window here. And sometimes, especially with species like walleyes and muskies, sometimes you go out there and everything is on. You first spot fish, second spot fish. But other days, it's crickets until that last half an hour of the day, and then everything happens, right? Bite windows are key. They're very important. There's no scheduling to them whatsoever. Sometimes you can look at patterns and kind of notice trends, but the fish are on their own schedule.
Stupid fish.
What's something that you've heard about, like kind of what you would call a myth about walleye in like May, June, let's say? What's something that is kind of a misnomer, or people that they claim it, but you don't think that it's true?
You got to jig for them in rivers. That's something I see a lot in the Kawarthas, at least. Like Rice Lake is a lake that, for those that know me, I spend a lot of time on Rice. It's my home water, I guess, the one I spend most time on. And for walleye fishing, it's just kind of a known, I don't know, a local thing that, you jig in the Otonabee, jig in the mouth of the Otonabee. Walleye opener, there's going to be 40 to 50 boats around the mouth of the Otonabee jigging a minnow on or live minnow or a soft plastic minnow on a jig head. And that's just that's how you catch walleye. That's how you do it. And that is not true, folks. That is not true. There's lots of other ways to catch them, and you can get away from that river and still do well, because walleyes do not all spawn in the same river. They spawn, for Rice Lake, for example, they spawn in the Otonabee, they spawn up the Indian, they spawn up in Hastings, close to the dam in Hastings, and I bet you there's some fish that just spawn in the lake.
Lazy.
Yeah, they're all over the place. Now, some areas, there's specific areas for sure. Like, they're not everywhere, right? There's going to be certain weed beds that they're using. But yeah, myth-wise, like, I always hear that. It's like, oh yeah, you got to go to the river. Go to the river mouth. Go to the river mouth. I stay away from the river mouth just because of the crowds that go to the river mouth. So if I can find some fish away from the river mouth, great. But I've been there too. I go to the river mouth sometimes. I never do great right in the river. Not anymore, because there's too many people there. So yeah, that's a myth though. You don't have to always be there.
I like it. Last question, I would say, if you could put together kind of like an itinerary or a plan, a one-day plan for an angler to go into the Kawarthas and get some success. I'm not talking exact GPS coordinates or anything like that, but what would you say to someone going out there, like, try this first, then move to this, then move to this, kind of like an itinerary like that?
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, again, it's going to depend what electronics you have and what resources you have, obviously. Like if you have a boat, if you're in a kayak, that kind of stuff. But if you're going out around opener, you got to find some green healthy weeds. That's the key. And a lot of the times you're going to find these green healthy weeds and everything is going to be around them. You're going to find, I can't tell you how many situations I've been in where in this time of year, the walleyes are in the same areas as the out of season largemouth bass or the pike, or you get the odd muskies. Everybody catches giant muskies in walleye season before muskie opens, right? Like there's the reason why the muskies are there. And you find an area, you're great. So find some weed growth. Go around, look for a healthy weed bed, and if you fish it and you're not catching walleye right away, don't rule it out, because again, that bite window may happen a little later. The conditions might change. You might get that walleye chop, and all of a sudden the walleyes are there and they're chewing, right? So that's what I would kind of do, is go out and try to find an area that's got life in it. In the Kawarthas, it's a little bit easier because it's not as big of a body of water as, say, some of the other fisheries, Bay of Quinte, Lake Erie, whatever, right? But once you find an area that's got some life in the Kawarthas, do some looking. Maybe you're not going to find it on that first shoreline that you try. Maybe you're not going to find it on the fifth shoreline that you try, because sometimes weed growth is limited this time of year, depending on the conditions, right? But once you find one, I bet you it's going to be good, and it's going to be good for a while before the fish choose a different area or relocate, or the weeds grow in thicker. So once you find one of those zones, you're golden for the next little bit, right? But that's it. Find a zone with life and work with it. They don't bite right away. Try it again in 3 hours or something like that, right? And you'd be surprised.
It's like that saying that 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water, right?
Yeah.
So you find the high density spots that look good. Because again, like when me and Andrew say, like when we were going crappie fishing last year and stuff, you're looking for small spots that are really good. And you may have to look around. Like someone like Bobby, he's a guide. Like he has those spots. He's not going to tell you those. But someone like me and Andrew, we actually have to find those spots. So it may do you well to spend a little bit of time just looking around and trying to find good spots, and not just be like, oh, this seems like it's an okay spot. Maybe spend a little bit of time looking around for some good weeds. Have some snorkel gear on, throw Andrew in the water, and if you don't have live scope, just he is alive and he has a scope. We got to do that. What are those things the guys in the bass tournament use when they have the big cone that goes in the water and they look down in the water?
Flogger.
We need to get one of those, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
Not for looking at spawning bass, but just to find weeds.
Yeah. Something that I've used that I do have on my boat that I take with me now is I have a little aqua view that I use too. And I can drop that straight down. I mean, I don't use it as much anymore since I got the live scope, but it's something I've had for quite a few years. And it's the cheapest model of AquaView. It's a small little 5-inch one, so it can fit just in one of my compartments in my boat. And it's as simple as just kind of pulling out a little cord. It's got a little camera on it, and it can, I'm not looking at it necessarily to find fish, but you want to see what a bottom looks like. You want to see what kind of weeds are down there. Kind of look on Google Images and kind of learn your weed types. What kind of pond weed looks like, what milfoil looks like, so that you can recognize it. And then once you see it, how it goes a long way. Knowing the aquatic plants and stuff is pretty important, especially for the Kawarthas, because weed is such a used habitat for all species of fish. Now, I've been to school for fish and wildlife, so that's kind of where I learned it all. We had an aquatic plants like assignment and stuff where we had to literally go out and collect the aquatic plants and press them and make this stuff. But it helped me in the long run.
Bobby's into scrapbooking.
Yeah. I got a good mark too. But yeah, no, it goes a long way once you learn that stuff and know what you're looking at, right?
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Yeah.
So our last question then is, I want to get the Goldilocks setup for you right now. What is your ideal spot? Like, I'm sure you're thinking right now of like, I can't wait to hit this one spot. And I'm not saying, again, no coordinates. You don't have to give up, the lake it's on or anything like that. But like, describe that spot that you're I know you've got one in mind of like what's the attributes of it are, and then what you want to fish. What's your first thing you're tying on to try and get that bite?
Okay, so did you say go over like a setup too?
Yeah, go over like a setup.
rod
So
reel
setup,
setup?
bait, and describe the actual location that you're fishing. And
It can be as bougie as you want.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, for those of you that know me, I'm a bit of a bougie gear guy. So on opener, I am going to be fishing a large hump that is just kind of outside of a river mouth. Like the river mouth is close. It's a very large hump, so it takes a long time to fish it, and it usually has some early weed growth on it. I'm going to be throwing my G Loomis NRX Plus 852 JWR. So it's a 7'1" medium, essentially like a medium fast rod with my Shimano Xsense 3000, a nice primo drag on the spinning reel, 10-pound braid to an 8-pound leader. And usually the first thing I'm going to start with is like a ball head and a 3-inch swim bait. And I'm going to be throwing that around, and I can work that off the bottom. I can throw it and let it go down on the bottom, and I should be able to catch a few doing that. So that's my first spot that I'm going to hit on opener, is that hump. It didn't happen to me this past season, it didn't happen to me this past opener, but this past season, if any of you guys have watched my YouTube videos, anybody listening, I catch a great big walleye on a hair jig, and it was on this hump. Yeah, it's going to bring me back because that hump usually has some fish and some nice ones on it. So,
yeah. And just to add to that, Bobby's videos, he started posting them the last few years. They're really high quality videos. He's got legit drone footage, pretty cool stuff. He goes over gear and everything. I watch every episode. I comment random things in the comments, and he's always like, thumbs up.
I mean, I do some camera work too, but Griff has gotten some amazing shots. A big shout out to Griff. I know we're talking about Griff not using long leaders and throwing wrong baits today, but Griff does some beautiful camera work, and those videos would not be possible without his help. So big shout out to him. Been a lot of fun making those videos. I've always kind of liked the videography side of things, photography, videographies, and I've dabbled in it in the past too, but I really committed to it last year to pump one out once a week, good quality stuff. And this year I'm going to be kind of shooting for the same thing, but I want to add more vlog style videos in as well to kind of show you guys a little bit more behind the scenes of what I go through as a guide, not just so much my, fishing days on the water, but a little bit about what goes behind in preparation for guides, what I'm thinking. Obviously I do a bunch of tournaments on the side, so we want to do some vlog stuff this year too. And yeah,
I'm excited. I like that. It's going to be behind the scenes. It's Bobby in his tidy whities walking around the backyard, walking his dog. He's like, hey.
I was thinking it's going to be the bad side of guiding. It's this guy Andrew on the boat, and this guy just kept stepping on all my rods laying on the deck. And he broke 4 of them. Look at all these guides, broken, gone.
Actually funny, if I filmed more of all my guided trips and stuff, there's all kinds of stuff I wish I had footage of. I did I had a lot of rods broken this past year. I broke a record for rods breaking, and none of them were broken because of the rod, on hook sets and stuff. It was all just crazy stuff. So maybe we'll catch some of that stuff on video this year too.
Well, we can help you out with that.
I wanted to make sure the trolling motor was on, so I started poking it with my NRX.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, I'll link below Bobby's YouTube channel as well. Everything to do with Bobby, his guiding website, his YouTube channel, his Instagram. I'm going to link all that below. So
awesome.
So before we finish off the episode, we're going to have a little bit of housekeeping from Jesse.
Yeah, so I always get to do the fun housekeeping part.
Yes.
So yeah, well, we like to thank everyone who supports us on Patreon. Again, all of our giveaways are on Patreon. We're actually starting up a bunch of really awesome giveaways. We had that musky lure giveaway a month ago, where we gave away 4 musky lures. We had that tactical fishing giveaway. We have a bunch coming up too. A lot of cool brands are reaching out to us this year, so we have some pretty cool ones coming. So you don't have to be a supporting member to enter the giveaways. You can join as a free member, and we have a bunch of other content on there as well. So make sure you do that. Again, the link's below. And it would be nice though, because gas is expensive this year. If you want to help put an extra liter of gas into Andrew's boat, join our Patreon.
like she says, you don't have to be a member, but just know if you're a free member, we love you a little less.
Yeah, we will slightly judge you. But for you people that have been supporting us for maybe a month, 2 months, a few years, we do really appreciate it, because running a podcast isn't free. And we really appreciate not having to pay for this out of our own pocket. So anyway, that's all the housekeeping.
Big thanks from myself personally as well, from both Jesse and I. So, and also, if you want to support Bobby, support his business. Go look into booking a guided trip with Bobby. Even if you're not into walleye fishing, even if you're like, you know what, I want the warmer temperatures. I don't want to be on a boat with, cold water. Talk to Bobby. Start booking now, because I know his year fills up quick.
Yeah, once we start getting out on the water, my schedule will definitely just fill up. So I bookings have already been rolling in, and like Andrew said, we don't just do walleyes to be fishing. We do crappies, pike, muskie, bass, walleye, basically everything that swims in the Kawartha Lakes minus carp. So
What?
yeah, no carp.
What about a
I know
bluegill
that.
trip?
Bluegill trip? I mean, well, they kind of go with the crappies, but you want to go for bluegill in August? We can make it happen, I guess.
Look at that. He's not only gracious, he's also accommodating.
Yeah.
So before we finish off the episode, we have Bobby's favorite part of it. It's the
Right.
quote of the week.
Well, I guess I gotta come up with a quote, eh?
I see what you did there.
Stay tuned for walleye season, guys. Good luck on the water. We'll see you out there.